Our greatest battle is not out there. Our greatest battle is inside.
This is The Entrepreneur Way with Neil Ball. Unlocking the secrets of successful entrepreneurs 7 days a week. Subscribe to our podcast and follow us on Twitter at Neil D. Ball. Napoleon Hill said the power of the mastermind is the driving force. To discover how you can unlock the potential in your business using the power of a mastermind, go to mastermindunlimited.com. And now, here is your host, Neil Ball.
Hello, it's Neil Ball. Thank you so much for joining me today on The Entrepreneur Way. The Entrepreneur Way is about the entrepreneur's journey, the vision, the mindset, the commitment, the sacrifice, failures and successes. I am so excited to bring you our special guest today, Dr. Bob Rausch. But before I introduce you to him, I have a little bit of a quote for you. John Fowle said, "The most important questions in life can never be answered by anyone except oneself." The Entrepreneur Way asks the questions so we all get the insight, inspiration and ideas to apply in our businesses. Dr. Bob, welcome to the show. Are you ready to share your version of the Entrepreneur Way with us?
Yes, Neil, I'm excited about it. Thank you for having me. And yeah, I'd love for these listeners to know kind of my story.
Thank you for coming on the show, Dr. Bob. Dr. Bob Rausch is the president of Energy Driven Leader, Inc. He's an innovator and a gifted conceptual thinker. He has a Ph.D. in clinical psychology and 30 plus years experience coaching entrepreneurs, corporate leaders, and their teams in the US, Canada, and Europe. His coaching has been stated as life-changing. Dr. Bob, can you provide us with some more insight into your business and personal life to allow us to get to know more about what you do and who you are?
I would love to do that, Neil. I grew up in the Baltimore projects. And one of the things that I can recall, and my mother and my father both confirmed this, is that I've always loved to help people. My father told me one time that of all the children, that I was the one who liked to serve others, and especially my mom, helping her out. But in the projects, it was that kind of behavior that was very important in terms of taking care of my siblings. When I left and went into the Air Force, at 17, I found that that same behavior was very strong with me. And I was talking with a sergeant one day, and he said, "You know, Rausch, what you need to do is you need to start taking courses in psychology if you're going to go to school after you get out of the Air Force." And I did. I started taking the basic courses in psychology. When I got out, I went to Louisiana Tech, graduated with a BA, and then got a master's degree in counseling. And with those 2 degrees, I started a counseling center. It was called Family Therapy Center in Shreveport, Louisiana. And I was just really into it. I loved doing the counseling. But what I felt is that it just wasn't enough. I wasn't impacting enough people. So what I decided to do at that point was to go to Santa Barbara, California, and I got a Ph.D. in clinical psychology at the Fielding Institute. So I just expanded my opportunity. And what I found with myself and with other entrepreneurs is that we're always expanding. We're always, what's next? What's more? And that surely is the way I've been my entire career. So when I got my PhD and I practiced for probably 15 years, and I clocked up some 35,000 hours of counseling people with all different kinds of problems. I got this rumbling again. I needed to do more. And I remember being asked to do a workshop with a PhD business person at LSU in Louisiana. And they wanted us to do a workshop on communication in business. And actually, I did my part on energy in communication, how we use our personal energy. And I'll tell you, that story in just a second. But as a result of that, I was asked by a local company, manufacturing company, to work with them. And boy, my entrepreneurial spirit just jumped all over that. Eventually, I shut down my practice and I began to do executive coaching. They didn't call it executive coaching back then. Team building is what they called it. And I worked with that company for 2 years. And as a result, by word of mouth, my opportunities just began to blossom from the standpoint of having more and more companies and larger companies to work with. In fact, I was just invited to do some coaching and consulting with my first billion-dollar company in Florida. So I was really excited about that. But the whole tenor of my work, Neil, is an experience that I had when I was in my private practice. I was extremely tired of my private practice. I was burning out. I wanted more, and I didn't know how to get it. And I remember staying at my office late one night, and I was actually praying. I was talking to God, saying, "Look, they're not getting any better, my patients. I'm getting worse. I need something." And it dawned on me that one of the things that was missing with them, and it was pretty clear that, Bob, your patients don't have any energy. They're out of energy. Well, I was out of energy. So the very next morning, what I did was, with my first patient, I asked him, "Well, how did you use your mental and emotional energy this week?" And of course, he looked at me like a deer in the headlights, and he didn't know what I was talking about. And truthfully, I didn't know what I was talking about. But all that is saying that I have always had the need to help, the need to grow, the need to find new ways, simple ways to touch the lives of other people, and those are the two ways that I have developed my entrepreneurial spirit. So I'm always looking for new training. I'm always looking for new programs to help other people.
Mm-hmm. So your USP is obviously being a clinical psychologist who's also a coach. How does that make you different to other coaches?
Let me say first, there are some extremely, extremely effective and very good coaches that do not have a Ph.D. in clinical psychology.
Yeah.
But the difference is, for me, is that I had 15 years of not only being educated in human behavior. My major was family therapy, and so, but also I had to go through all of the other courses to understand abnormal behavior. In fact, I found a lot of abnormal behavior in some of the companies that I've worked in. But it gives me that edge, and the edge is that I have a better grasp of not only what the issues are, and I'll give you an example of that. Many, and I don't mean all, but many of the CEOs that I've worked with are attention deficit. Some of them had no idea that they were attention deficit. And so I referred them to a physician. The physician prescribed medication, and a lot of their behavior began to shift and change. That's one of the benefits of having that PhD in clinical psychology. The other thing is that when I started doing my consulting and my coaching, then I've accumulated another 15 years of understanding leadership, understanding corporations, understanding how business runs. And so the merger of those two things, the PhD in clinical psychology and also understanding business and corporations, has just given me an edge. It's given me a little bit of a heads up or a little ahead of some of the coaches that are doing coaching presently.
Mm-hmm. And what do you enjoy most about what you do?
Neil, I get the biggest kick out of seeing people get it, and get the almost like, and I know you understand, the light turns on, and all of a sudden they're they're behaving differently. I talked to a vice president of IT yesterday, and she's struggling with her communication with one of her peers. And we talked about how she could approach that peer. Now, the peer has some issues, and I think some of them have to do with personality. So I never diagnose. I mean, I don't want to do that. But it's pretty obvious that what this lady was dealing with was an insecure peer on their leadership team. So when the lady who I was coaching got that and understood, now here's the way you need to approach her, then the light went off for her. I mean, she was so appreciative. And I'm not slapping myself on the back as much as what I'm saying is that's really what I get the biggest kick out of, helping people solve their problem and understand behavior at the same time.
Mm. Someone once said to me that business isn't complicated. I'm sure they said something like people make it complicated. So that sort of ties in with the sort of type of thing you're saying there, really, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I agree with that. People are complex.
Yeah.
And we have so many personalities, different personalities. We have so many things that have happened in our lives that influence how we lead others. I have 3 basic exercises that I do with people to kind of unwind that complexity. Mm-hmm. One of them is who were the influencers in your life. The other is what were the activities, the significant life events that changed you. And the third is the father factor. What was your relationship with your father like? Now, those are all 3 psychologically oriented, but what they do is they help me figure out the complexity in an individual. So I would agree. Business is easy. Mm-hmm. It's people that are tough.
A number of people I've talked to have talked about the Myers-Briggs personality test. What's your opinion on that? Is it something you used or do you not use it?
No, I don't use the Myers-Briggs. It's Myers-Briggs was developed on the premise of a psychologist named Carl Jung. And Carl Jung was an incredible psychologist. I don't use the Myers-Briggs because it doesn't go deep enough for me. I use a profile called the Berkman method of understanding behavior. And Berkman gives me both the strengths of that person. In other words, we all have 2 levels of behavior. We have one level, we have our strengths. Berkman calls that usual behavior. So you and I talk, we have coffee, whatever. We will both understand the strengths in one another. In other words, the behavior we usually have when we're having coffee or lunch or whatever. But Berkman also measures instinctive behavior. And instinctive behavior is that behavior we're born with. And Berkman does a much better job than any of the other profiles. All of them offer some good stuff. Mm-hmm. It's just that I choose to use the Berkman because it gives me a more depth in understanding people. I like the Myers-Briggs. I studied the Myers-Briggs. I studied almost all of them. But I don't use it I don't use it at all.
Okay, thanks for explaining that. And how do you relax when you're not working in your business?
Well, Neil, I love what I'm doing. So, a lot of times, some of my relaxation is being alone and really thinking of other ways that either I can grow or I can help other people grow. But I also know what your question is about. In other words, even the good things can become bad things if we do it too much. Mm-hmm. So I used to run. I have problems with my back now. I work out on a regular basis, lift weights. I love exercise. I've been an exercise freak my whole life. And we scuba dive. My wife, Ginger, and I scuba dive. And we have 5 sons, and we have 7 grandsons. So I don't know if you call that relaxation, but it's sure different when we're with them.
Yeah.
And I do, referring back to the Berkman indicates for my personality that alone time is good for me. It's the way I re-energize. It's the way I get more energy. So Ginger, my wife, knows that for me, being by myself, taking a walk, love to be in nature, but just being by myself is a big refueler, energy refueler for me.
Yeah. A number of people I've talked to, or a number of entrepreneurs I've talked to, have talked about the fact that when you really enjoy doing something, then it really isn't work. I just wondered, when those people spend all of their time doing that and they're totally consumed by it, what's your take on that? Because obviously you have I'm just thinking, being a clinical psychologist, you might have a slightly different take on that and an opinion on it of why they shouldn't do that or why it's okay. What do you think?
Well, I don't think it's okay for me, even though, as I said, I love what I do. I don't think it's okay because I think that even the good could become the enemy and be the bad if we're not careful. The fact of the matter is that personality needs variation. It needs different. It needs we need time with our wives or our husbands. We need time alone. I have to get away from my business because it's good for me to broaden my perspective. You know, they say of the old samurai warriors that they would learn all of the warrior tricks and the swords and all of that other stuff, and then they had to take a year off and study something like butterflies or flowers or whatever. And when I first read that, I thought, what a great idea. Now, I haven't taken a year off to study butterflies or whatever, but the bottom line is I get interested in other things. I don't only read leadership books. My sense is there are far too many leadership books out, and a lot of them say exactly the same thing. And so I have my particular writers that I like. And then I have other people that I read because it's something absolutely different than my business.
And do you have any entrepreneurial role models?
Yes. Sadly, both of them are. I have many, but the two that had the most impact on me have passed away. One of them was a guy named Bill McGrain. Bill helped me at a time when I really needed to shift from that counseling clinic to being a consultant and an executive coach. Bill's, I guess if you call it, his claim to fame with me is he loved me. He loved what I did, but he did everybody. You know, it wasn't like just me. He loved the people he worked with. He was big into self-esteem, and I admired him. I admired how he lived. I admire how he learned. But he was one of my really big role models in my transition period. And the other person is Warren Bennis. Warren Bennis passed away, I think, last year or year before last. He's written a lot of books that have been just special to me. On Becoming a Leader is one of them. Geeks and Geezers is another one that he wrote with another gentleman. But Warren Bennis thought like I think, and maybe that's the reason he was such a role model for me. He truly believed that for a leader to be successful, or for an entrepreneur to really be capable and competent, they had to deal with their own stuff first. They had to really understand who they were, who they are, rather, and before they started reaching out to other people. And I'm a big believer in that. I have to know my stuff. You know, what drives me, what makes me angry, what turns me off, what turns me on. And I think all leaders need to develop that before they do anything else.
Thank you, Dr. Bob. Dr. Bob, can we just talk about before you were an entrepreneur? And can you tell us about the difficulties you had to overcome when you started your business?
Yes. I mentioned before that I love to help people and I love to see them be successful. I knew nothing about business. I mean, again, you can have the desire to help people, and I definitely had that. But if you don't have a business sense, if you don't have the structures in place, then what happens is you're doing what you love, but you're not making the money you need to make. You're not being able to contact the people that you need to contact. In other words, I did not have a real business sense when I first started, and that was the biggest thing to overcome.
Thank you for that. And did you have any doubts that delayed you starting your business?
No, I think maybe most entrepreneurs are like this. I mean, I'm kind of, somebody says jump off the cliff, I'm over the edge. It's kind of like I have a great idea, and what I want to do is I want to do this idea. I just know it's going to work. And so I never lacked any confidence. The thing that did trouble me was that it wouldn't move as fast as I wanted it to. Mm-hmm. I was kind of like, let's get this thing on. I need to be I need to be known by the whole planet here, and I'm not. And so it was kind of like, I was ready to go, and I didn't have the patience that I needed to have.
Mm. And what mistakes did you make that slowed your journey?
I was a little hard-headed. I did two things that really slowed up the success of my business. Number one is I allowed people to hire me who I did not need to work with. And in my gut, I knew that I did not need to work with them. That was the first thing. And they all ended in total failure. I mean, it was just a train wreck. And the second thing was I worked with people too long. I can look back over my career and I can say, as an entrepreneur, I would see new things that they needed to do or could do to improve their communication, their lives, their business, their bottom line, and all that. And so I would come up with these ideas, and I wanted to. I was moving faster than they needed to move, and so I worked with them too long. And I would really correct. I corrected it. When I found it out, I really corrected. I don't work with everybody who calls me on the phone, and or emails me. Nor do I work with people forever. I have a terminal point where it's time to quit.
Mm-hmm. So when you said you worked too quickly for them, how do you mean? You mean you went too fast or they went too slow?
I saw things. Yeah, they weren't ready to move as fast as I wanted them to. For example, I would work with I did some work with some medium-sized companies, 300 million, and pretty much they were open to new ideas and change and all of that. And then I got into some higher revenue, Fortune 500 companies. For example, U.S. Steel. I mean, they're like a dinosaur. It was like I was ready to move, and it's like a big ship. You just can't turn a big ship because one guy walks in and feels like he knows how to turn it. I think I moved too fast for the organization, and I needed to slow up and pace them or learn their pace instead of them operating from my pace.
I see. Thanks for explaining that. And what are some of the things that you did before you started your business that'd be helpful tips for some of the listeners who haven't yet taken their first step on the entrepreneur way?
I'm a avid reader. I read a lot of books. I listened to a lot of people on CD or way back then tapes. I was big into personal development, whether it was physical exercise or mental and emotional exercise. I was at one point I was on the staff of a church, and what I realized after a year of being on that church staff, this ain't what I need to be doing. I'm gonna punch somebody out in the church, and I don't need to do that. But I just wasn't. They weren't ready for me, and I wasn't ready for them. So, but the things that really helped me the most, well, actually that helped me the most because I tried different things to see what fit my personality and where I could work, I could do a more effective job with individuals. The working out was good for me in terms of developing my entrepreneurial spirit, because what happens, I think, with a lot of entrepreneurs is they work. Like I said, I love my work. But if you don't take time for yourself, if you don't take time to take care of yourself, then over time, no matter how much you love your work, you're going to burn out. And so I really discovered that that taking that pause, some people say to sharpen the saw, and I learned that I learned that before I was an entrepreneur, but I had to relearn that after I was an entrepreneur because I was like a kid in a candy shop. I thought I could go 24/7 and it would be just wonderful.
Yeah, and if we can just move forward a little bit and talk about a few things once you actually became an entrepreneur. And if you could just give us some of your thoughts on these. Do you think culture is important from the beginning in a business?
I read that question 3 or 4 times. Tell me what you mean, if you don't mind.
Sure.
What does that question mean?
I'm talking about business culture. So how you decide how your whole business is going to operate, the attitude and the philosophy within your business, and just how you deliver what you do to your customers and how you define all of that.
Probably the best way for me to answer that is I got a testimonial from one of my clients, a gentleman out in Salt Lake City, Utah, and he said that Dr. Bob has that ability to join the team but not be a part of the team. And what he was saying was, I could join their culture, and I think I'm good at that. In other words, I want to find out what their culture is, because if I don't work within the culture of an organization, whatever that culture is, if I don't work within their culture, then and I try to take another culture into an organization, I'm going to fail. They'll kick back or push back on that in a heartbeat. Okay. So culture makes a big difference. I mean, I think it makes a huge difference. We see it in mergers and acquisitions. If one company acquires an organization and they want to change the culture automatically, then 75% of those fail. Just because people don't, no matter what the culture was, people don't want to leave their culture until they understand what that new culture is going to look like.
So when you start a business, obviously you have the opportunity of actually defining that culture. So how important do you think that is at the beginning?
I think it's incredibly important. The best way for me to do that is to not only talk to the leaders, but to talk to the people who are the workers, the people who are on the front line. And I ask them, I don't necessarily ask them what's your culture like, because culture has become a catch-all phrase. I mean, a lot of people talk about it. And what I ask them is questions like, how well are you communicating? How do you show appreciation to one another? What do you do when you have a difficult time? How do you deal with conflict? Those kinds of questions, and a lot of that, is because I am a clinical psychologist. In other words, having that Ph.D. helps. What I'm looking for are behavioral activities, behavioral characteristics. And from my understanding of those behaviors, I'll understand better how the culture functions or how it operates. And so I don't give a test. Some people give tests to determine culture and all that. I like it face to face with people and talking to them and asking them those questions I just mentioned.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you for explaining that. And knowing what you know now, is there anything that if you'd known it when you started out would have helped you to shortcut the learning curve?
Yeah, let's see. How many hundreds of things would I One thing I would do differently is I would have my own coach. I have had coaches along the way, but I would have had my own coach more often. The other thing I would have done is I would have balanced my marketing with my business activity. What occurs, I think, with entrepreneurs is that we'll get into the work that we do and we forget to market. And then all of a sudden, when the work begins to slow down, then we start marketing. Mm. And then when we are, really marketing and the business picks up, we stop marketing. And so I would balance that more in my business more than I have. I'm doing a much better job of it now. The last thing I would do, or the third thing I would do, is my goodness, we found it out on this, even setting up our recording here. I would learn more about social media faster.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
You talked about coaching, having a coach there. What about masterminds? Have you any opinions on masterminds?
Love them. Love mastermind groups. I actually have two of them. Mm-hmm. One of them is not a group. It's a group of two people. It's an associate of mine. We meet every 2 weeks, and we just discuss anything and everything that has to do with leadership or that has to do with the work that we're doing in the organizations that we're doing it. The other is a group of probably 8 to 10 men. We get together on Friday morning for breakfast, and we spend a lot of time talking about the market. What's the world market look like? We don't spend a lot of time talking about this presidential race we have going over here, but we do spend some of it. What are the consequences of the race? Mm-hmm. So I love mastermind groups. When I came into the business arena, when I became an executive coach, you have to understand, I knew nothing about corporations. What these people have done for me is they've taught, because they were CEOs, CFOs, they're all C-level or were C-level people. And so I've really picked their brains to understand what business is all about and how businesses function. The other thing that I did along the way is, and I did this because of these mastermind groups. When I started working for a company, I did a lot of research on that company. In other words, if I worked for Pfizer Pharmaceutical, I researched them. I got a letter from a lady from Pfizer who was an HR executive saying that she really appreciated the fact that I knew a lot of the language. I knew a lot about the Pfizer Pharmaceuticals. And the reason for that is because I just did a whole lot of research from the web and every other place I could find. So, masterminds are important because they stimulate me to learn more business areas and leadership areas that I need to know.
Mm-hmm. And how much does gut feeling influence your decisions in your business?
For me, it's a whole lot. It's a whole lot. I mentioned earlier that that I would take on people who I would coach people who I didn't really need to coach, and I didn't trust my gut. When I'm talking with a person, because I think I'm pretty intuitive, when I'm talking with a person and I just know this is not right, there's something not right here, then I need to stop the conversation, and I do very politely do that now. But that's my gut. I mean, I think when I neglect to trust my inner man, then I get myself in trouble, and that's including I will talk too much, I'll say too much. I have to be real careful of that. My guts help me balance that.
Mm-hmm. Life is made of constant change, whether we like it or not. In fact, some people say that the only constant is change. Mm-hmm. Dr. Bob, how do you try to keep up with change?
I hired a social media girl. I hired a lady, 25 years old, who is incredible. I mean, just massively incredible. And she knows social media inside and out. And what I've done is I have decided to hire people who were younger than me, who had a sense of where the world is going. Where social media is going, where marketing on social media is going, and so I'm a person who loves change. I mean, I'm not resistant to it at all, as far as I know. My wife may tell you different, but I'm really not. But the idea is that I think that the younger business people have a better grip on where our world is going and how to work within that world. And I will never get that unless I hire people that are much younger than me. So that's the way I handle change. I hire people who know where it's going, and I'll also I'll read different books and listen to different speakers on the issue of change, and so it's important for me to do that. But again, I'm not resistant to it at all.
Mm-hmm. Well, you mentioned books there, and what is your favorite book on entrepreneurialism, business, personal development, leadership, or motivation? And can you tell us why you have chosen it?
I have two books that I absolutely love. There are three books that I read every year. But let me tell you the two books first. One of those books is On Becoming a Leader by Warren Bennis. I mentioned him as one of my distant mentors. On Becoming a Leader is just a phenomenal book. Well, everything that Bennis wrote was phenomenal insight, because Warren Bennis starts with the inner person. And he works out from there. So Warren Bennis is my favorite. The other book that's one of my favorites, and one that I read every year, is Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning. Mm-hmm. That keeps me focused on what's the purpose of all of this. Viktor Frankl was a Jew in Nazi Germany. He went to the concentration camps. Frankl was a psychiatrist, and the book is absolutely incredible. So the three books that I read every year: the Bible, Man's Search for Meaning, and the third book is Napoleon Hill's book on Think and Grow Rich. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't read Napoleon Hill's book Think and Grow Rich because I want to think and grow rich. I mean, that's a good idea. Mm-hmm. But I read it because Napoleon Hill talks about so many of the great thinkers of the early 20th century and what they did, what kind of mastermind groups they had, what they did, what he called autosuggestion. Mm-hmm. So those are the books that I really love.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. Everyone, when you have a busy life, listening to audiobooks is a great way to expand your knowledge in the time when you may be doing other things, such as driving or when you are at the gym. We have a special offer for you of a free audiobook of your choosing. To choose your free audiobook, go to www.freeaudiobookoffer.com. As long as you haven't already signed up, then you will qualify. Dr. Bob, what I'd like to do now is speculate about the future a little bit now. So what one thing would you do with your business if you knew that you could not fail?
That was a hard one for me. That was a really, really hard one for me. I think what I would do is I would step out a little further in terms of helping people, getting into more of the higher echelon of leadership. I would love to coach, not that it would work, but I would love to coach some of the political leaders of our country. But I would love to step out in a bigger way to touch the lives of people. I've always felt like if you get to the top and you can help that top leader, then you're going to influence much more people because you're there. But it would be whatever I have to get past to do that. That's what I do. I'd step out and with higher, more influential leadership.
A great answer. And what skill, if you were excellent at it, would help you the most to double your business?
As much as I kind of fret a bit about the social media, I think it would be me being more adept at the computer. Me being more adept at social media on the computer. I just started my webinars. 2016 is going to be a time of webinars for me, and I'm going to have a webinar every 2 weeks. And so I really am interested in getting more into the social media stuff and expanding my business through the internet.
Mm-hmm. And in 5 years from now, if a well-known business publication was publishing an article on your business after talking to your customers and suppliers, what would you like it to say?
That this guy not only helped me with my business, but he also helped me use my heart more effectively. And he made a real connection between my head and my heart, and my life is much more fulfilling now than it ever has been as a result of spending time with Dr. Bob.
Okay, thank you for that. We're now at the part of the show where you share 3 golden nuggets with us. So, Dr. Bob, what's your favourite quote, and how have you applied it?
My favorite quote is an African quote that says, "If there is no enemy within, the enemy without can do us no harm." And I tell you, the way I've applied it, Neil, is in everything I do. In other words, our greatest battle is not out there. Our greatest battle is inside. I've come up with a program called Energy Overcoming Anxiety. And this quarter in my business is devoted to my writing, my blogs, my everything on my webinars. Everything is devoted to energy overcoming anxiety. And the thing that I want people to really understand is that internally we have to make sure we're right. We have to have the confidence. If we have a battle within, then we're using our energy, we're wasting our energy, and we're not going to be able to fight the battle without. Now that's the same thing with a marriage. A married couple who battle within are not going to be able to battle the things outside their relationship. It's the same with a business. If a business is battling within, if the conflict is within, then out there is going to beat them. They are going to lose some way, in some fashion, because the conflict inside is too great. And I think that quote has had a lot of meaning for me in a lot of ways.
And do you have any favorite online resources that you could share with us?
I really like Alan Weiss. Alan Weiss puts out, and I don't know if it's alanweiss.com or what, but Alan Weiss is a $1 million consultant. He wrote the book called $1 Million Consultant, and he puts out every Monday morning quote, a little passage. It's really good, and he's very down to earth. And I think the other thing that's online is I look for the unique writers. In other words, there's 1 million writers on leadership. I'm looking for, and I haven't found this, to tell you the truth, I'm looking for those writers who really address both the internal need of the leader, whether it's anxiety or whether it's depression, whatever that is inside the leader, which is the way I work, and how they change or meet that internal need, and how it transforms their leadership. There's just a mountain of things I could say about that, but what I have found is that through a research study that was done by a psychologist here in the United States, is that he surveyed people across the United States, top leaders. And what he discovered was that 19 out of 20 of those leaders' greatest fear was that their subordinates find out how inadequate they felt in their job. Now, that is this golden territory for an entrepreneur like me, because I don't deal with the processes of business as much as I deal with the leadership of business. And so, I'm not even sure what the question was now because I went on and on, but that's what I do.
What was your favorite online resource? But maybe that's an opportunity for you to write that book.
Yep. I could add it to the other. I've written 3 books.
Yeah.
And I think that's another thing that I think would be great for entrepreneurs to do. And I have to say real quick, it took me 8 years to write my first book. It took me 1 year to write my second book, and it took me 6 months to write my third.
Uh-huh. And what is your best advice to other entrepreneurs?
You continue your own personal development. Make sure you hire the best minds in the world that can help you understand people and understand leadership and understand business.
Thank you for that.
That would be my advice to other entrepreneurs.
Everyone, if you didn't manage to get a note of Dr. Bob's favourite resource or his favourite books, then you can find the links on Dr. Bob's show notes page. Just go to theentrepreneurway.com and search for Dr. Bob or Dr. Bob Rausch in the search box. Dr. Bob, is there anything else that you'd like to add about your business?
Well, I'd like to very quickly say that we're launching some e-learning courses this year, and I really invite everyone to go to energydrivenleader.com and take a look at some of those e-learning courses, and also that if anyone has any questions or comments or anything at all they want to share with me, to contact me at Dr. Bob, DRBOB, at energydrivenleader.com.
Thank you for that. Dr. Bob, at the beginning of this conversation, you said that you'd like to help people to get to the next step in life, and I think you've certainly given us some great tips today which will help some people and do that. So thank you for sharing your wisdom and coming on the show.
Thank you, Neil. It's a real pleasure, and I feel like I've made a new friend, so that's good.
Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to The Entrepreneur Way. Subscribe to our podcast and follow us on Twitter at Neil D. Ball.